The rancher lived alone for years until a crying woman appeared naked at his fence. That's how the story begins. And I reckon that's how it'll end, too. No matter what came after, I never meant to be a man of silence. It just came easy after all the noise life threw at me. When you've buried more than you've built, you learn the value of quiet. Some folks fill their hours with conversation, others with whiskey. I filled mine with the hum of cicadas and the creak of weathered wood. Just me, the land, and whatever the sun didn't burn. The plains out here ain't forgiving, but they're honest. Dust doesn't lie, neither do coyotes. The wind speaks only when it has something to say. That morning was like all the others. Sky stretched wide and pale above. The earth cracked and yawning underfoot. Fence posts stood like sentinels, wearied but proud, and the air smelled of mesquite and memory. I'd just come back from feeding. The marae, same steps I'd taken 100 times before, boots crunching over dry grass, a coffee tin cooling in my hand. The porch boards groaned hello. The rocking chair waited without asking anything of me. Everything exactly as it should be until I heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the wind. It started soft, more breath than voice, but sharp enough to stop my heart mid-beat, a cry maybe, or the memory of one. It caught in the throat. Of the morning hung there like a secret waiting to fall. I stepped off the porch, slow. The kind of slow a man uses when he's walking toward something sacred or dangerous, and unsure which it might be. The light was just bending over the horizon, casting gold against the brush. I saw her then. She was standing at the fence line. Bare, covered in dirt and ash and something darker, dried blood, I think. Her hair tangled like tumbleweed stuck to her face, and her arms hugged her chest like she was trying to hold herself together. Her knees bent inward, trembling. And, her eyes, good Lord, her eyes looked like they'd forgotten how to close. She didn't speak, didn't scream. Just sobbed. Quiet and low, like someone who'd learned long ago that loud crying only brings louder pain. I stood there a while, holding the air between us like it was breakable. Maybe it was. Then I turned, walked back toward the porch, and grabbed the blanket off the rocking chair. It was wool, old, frayed at the corners. I held it out as I approached, careful not to spook her. My voice caught behind my ribs. She flinched when I got close, eyes wide, legs stiff, but didn't move away. Didn't run. I laid the blanket over her shoulders like you'd cover a sleeping dog in winter. She didn't thank me, didn't need to. Her breath hitched like she'd just remembered she had lungs. I stepped back, gave her space, then turned and walked to the well. The bucket creaked as I pulled it up. Cold water, fresh from deep earth. I dipped an old tin cup in, brought it to her. She took it with both hands, shaky and slow, like it might vanish if she moved too fast. She drank, and then she looked at me. Not like a woman looks at a man. Not like prey looks at a predator. She looked at me like I was something confusing. Something not expected. I nodded. That was all. Then walked to the barn and opened the big side door. Rest in there, I said, soft as the dust that clung to her feet. Ain't much, but it's quiet. She didn't answer, just started walking. Her bare feet made no sound on the dirt. She clutched the blanket tight. Like a memory she wasn't ready to lose, she disappeared into the barn's shadow like she belonged there. The rest of the day moved slow. Like it knew not to disturb what had settled. I chopped wood. Fixed the south fence. Picked 2 fresh tomatoes that somehow made it through the drought. But nothing tasted right. The air held her scent, smoke, fear, wild roses maybe. I found myself glancing toward the barn more than once, like I needed proof she was real. That night I lit a lantern and sat by the hearth. I didn't read, didn't write. Just stared into the flame and thought about the sound she made. That cry. It didn't belong in this place. This land was full of echoes, but that noise, that was new. Sleep came late and heavy. The kind where you don't dream, just fall into a hole and stay there. I woke before dawn, couldn't say why. Just did. The floor was cold underfoot. I pulled on boots, grabbed the same blanket I'd given her the night before, and opened the front door. And there she was, sitting on the porch steps, knees to chest, wrapped in an old flannel shirt of mine that must have fallen from the laundry line. Her hair was cleaner now, still tangled but less wild. The blanket lay folded beside her like she was giving it back. She didn't say a word. Didn't look at me. Just sat there, silent, breathing, waiting, and I knew. Whatever storm she'd come from hadn't passed yet, but she was still standing, still here. And maybe, just maybe, so was I. She never gave her name, and I never asked. Some truths only make it harder to breathe. Mornings came quiet, like the land itself was holding its breath. The sun rose in soft colors over the horizon, casting gold across the wheat stalks and painting the barn in pale orange. I rose before the light touched the fields and left fresh coffee on the porch railing. Same as always. By the time I returned from the well or the north pasture, the tin cup would be empty, placed back in its place, never in the wrong spot. That was her way. She slept in the barn the first 2 nights. On the third, I left a folded quilt beside the door. She didn't take it until after sundown. On the fourth, I found her curled in the rocker on the porch before dawn. My old shirt still wrapped around her like a promise someone else broke. She moved like a ghost at first, barely a sound. But there was nothing ghostly about her hands. They knew what work was. I came in one morning to find the floors swept, the corners too, where the dust liked to collect like secrets. Another day, my torn coat hung neatly from the doorframe, a patch of canvas stitched over the hole with thread I didn't own. I watched her from the barn once, barefoot in the coop, coaxing eggs from the hens like she'd done it all her life. Not a word spoken. Not even to the birds, and I found myself cooking for 2 without meaning to, bigger portions. An extra biscuit. Hot stew left steaming on the porch at sunset. She never ate while I watched, but when I came out after sundown, the bowl would be scraped clean. A napkin folded atop it like a thank you written in silence. I never told her to stay. But I never asked her to leave either. She walked like someone who once danced. That's what struck me one day. While I watched her cross the garden, how her feet touched the earth like it was music, like the soil held memory, like she remembered. Once being light and didn't know how to forget, but she didn't smile. Not then, not even when the flowers bloomed from the seed she must have planted near the trough. A little yellow bloom pushing up through the cracked earth like it refused to believe in endings. At night, I heard her cry, not loud, not like before. No, this was different. This was the kind of crying that never leaves your chest. The kind that slips out through the breath, slow and trembling. Sometimes I'd stand at the window and stare out into the dark. Hand on the curtain, frozen by the sound of someone remembering too much. And sometimes I'd think about her. The one I loved. Before the silence took root in my bones. We were married just 3 years when the fever came. Took her in a week. No storm, no warning. Just went to sleep one night and woke up alone. The land didn't care. The animals still needed feeding. The fence still needed mending. Grief don't stop the seasons, I learned. It just changes. The way you move through them. I buried her under the oak tree near the ridge, planted wild sage at her feet. Never visited often, never spoke of her again. Until this woman came, now it seemed like grief had bloomed again. Different shape. Same ache. It was a Thursday when we went into town. Supplies were low. Couldn't put it off any longer. I hitched the mule and offered her the spare shawl that hung behind the door. She took it without speaking, wore it loose around her shoulders. Like she'd done it before. We rode side by side, silent but not tense. Like we'd learned how to breathe in the same rhythm. The town of Elms Hollow was small. One saloon, one store. One street that got swept only when the wind got tired of waiting, but it had eyes. And mouths. They started whispering the second we stepped down from the wagon. She stayed behind me as we entered the general store. Her hands clutched the edge of the shawl like armor. I kept my eyes on the shelves, nails, beans, lamp oil, salt, but I could feel the eyes on her like heat. Then the storekeeper, a man with a mouth too big for his manners, leaned over and muttered just loud enough for his words to find ears. You know what kind of woman walks barefoot into a man's land naked, don't you? I didn't look at him, didn't look at her either. Just finished my list and paid in coin. My fingers didn't shake. My face didn't flinch, but her shoulders did, She didn't say a word on the ride home. Just sat quiet, hands folded, eyes low. I could tell she'd heard. Could tell the old shame had crept back in, like smoke under a locked door. When we reached the cabin, she didn't eat. Just took the bread inside and vanished into the barn. That night I sat out on the porch. Boots off, fire low. The moon hung like a cracked plate in the sky. I heard the screen door creak behind me. She stepped out holding a tin cup. Steam curling from the rim. My coffee. She placed it beside me, hands trembling just enough to catch the light. Her eyes didn't meet mine, not at first. But then they did, and in them I saw everything she hadn't said since the moment she arrived. Guilt, shame, that old ache that tells a woman she's worth less than the ground. She walks on. She whispered just one word. Sorry. The sound of it broke something I didn't know was still whole. I waited a moment before I answered. Then I said, low and sure, you don't owe me anything. She looked at me, eyes wide with surprise. Not the kind that jumps, but the kind that unfolds slow like dawn. And for the first time, something inside her softened, not a smile. Not yet, but the beginning of one, and that was enough. The days softened after that. Not warmer, not brighter, just less sharp. She started humming. First time I heard it, I thought it was the wind catching the porch screen. But then I saw her, sleeves rolled, hands deep in dishwater, sunlight on her cheek, and the sound rose gently from her chest like steam. A fragile melody, like something she'd carried in secret for too long. I didn't ask what song it was. Didn't need to. Some songs aren't about music. They're about surviving long enough to make noise again. That same afternoon I left. A book on the bench beneath the oak. Nothing fancy, just a collection of old poems bound in cracked leather. The kind I used to read when the world felt heavier than my hands could hold. Next morning, it was gone. Next evening it was back. But with a dried flower tucked between the pages. No words. Just a bloom, yellow, brave. She began sitting out there beneath the tree most afternoons. Knees folded, head bent, finger tracing the lines slow like she was listening for something inside the silence. I watched her from the porch, pretending I wasn't, and when she'd catch me, we both looked away, but neither of us left. One evening, the sky turned lavender before nightfall. Crickets hadn't yet found their rhythm. I was fixing the hinge on the back gate when I heard her voice behind me. Can I sleep inside tonight? I turned slow. She stood barefoot again, the porch light turning her shadow into something long and lonely behind her. I nodded, no hesitation. But I didn't ask why. Maybe because I already knew. I cleared the room, extra quilt, a pillow at the head, the floor swept. Then I gathered my things and made for the barn. She stopped me with just 3 words. Don't leave your bed. I froze. She wasn't asking, she wasn't suggesting, she was giving something back, the trust I never asked for, but always handled careful. Inside, I laid a blanket down the middle of the bed. Not a barrier, just a boundary, a silent agreement. Between two people who knew too much about the danger of hands, we lay there, backs turned, eyes open. I could hear her breathing, steady, slow, like someone learning how to be still. Neither of us slept, and maybe that was the point. She told me the next night. The stars were out, full and bright, like they were leaning closer than usual. She sat beside me on the porch step, arms wrapped around her knees. Her voice came quiet. Too even, like she'd rehearsed it while she was alone. My husband sold me, she said. Traded me for whiskey and 2 rifles? I didn't say anything. Just let the silence hold her. She went on. They tied my hands. Rode me out with 3 other women. No names, just mouths. One tried to fight. She didn't last. Her fingers gripped her ankle like a tether. I escaped near the river, tried to run with the baby. Current pulled her before I could scream. Her voice cracked then. Just a little. Just enough. I wasn't crying because I was hurt, she said. I was crying because someone opened a gate, and for the first time, no one chased me. I turned to her then. Not fast. Just enough to let her know I was there, but I didn't touch her. Didn't dare. She looked at me, eyes raw, unhidden, and for a second I thought she might crumble, but she didn't. She breathed, and in that breath, I saw the outline of the woman she used to be, the woman she could still become. Days stretched. Longer after that. Spring pressed up through the hard soil, stubborn and bright. The two of us found a rhythm, not the kind you choreograph, just the kind that grows when two lives start to brush against each other gently. We shared meals on the porch. No more silence between us, not talk, not yet, but the kind of presence that feels like warmth without fire. One afternoon she laughed at real sudden, full. It happened over something small, a chicken that kept stealing tomatoes from her basket. It hopped up, squawked, and flopped right off the fence trying to escape. She covered her mouth like laughter was a sin. But it was too late. I'd already heard it, and I smiled. God, I smiled so wide it hurt. For a second we looked at each other. Like we were both 10 years younger, like we hadn't lost things we couldn't name. Like maybe, just maybe, this world still had something soft left in it. Then came the rider, late afternoon, dust rising behind him like smoke. I knew the shape of that ride, fast, heavy, with a message that don't wait till dinner. He reined in hard at the gate. I met him halfway. You the one keeping the girl? He asked. I didn't answer. Just looked at him. He spit in the dirt. Man came through town asking questions. Big man. Ugly temper. Says he's looking for what's his. I felt her behind me, not near. But watching, the rider glanced past me, lowered his voice. He ain't just looking, mister. He's planning. I nodded, tipped my hat. He rode off without another word. I turned to find her at the edge of the porch. Barefoot, same as always. Arms wrapped around herself like armor that didn't work anymore. She didn't ask who. She already knew. I walked up slow. She didn't cry. Didn't flinch. She just said, calm as dust settling, if he comes, you don't have to protect me. I looked her straight in the eye, not like a man who's thinking, like a man who's already decided. I'm not a man who watches from the porch anymore. And this time she didn't look away, she just nodded. And stayed. The wind turned sharp at dusk. One of those nights where the sky bruises over too fast and the land forgets how to breathe. The animals grew still. The chickens didn't fuss even when the breeze knocked loose a shutter. The kind of silence you don't trust. She was inside, sorting herbs she'd gathered from the hill, quiet, focused, calm like a woman who knew storms didn't always make noise. I was on the porch sharpening a blade I didn't plan to use. Some men need iron in hand to feel safe. I needed only to be sure of where I stood. Then came the hooves. Too fast. Too heavy. Dust curling over the ridge like smoke off a dying fire. He didn't stop at the gate. Just barreled in, reins pulled. Hard, liquor sloshing from the bottle in his left hand, pistol swaying loose at his hip. Hat low, eyes red. Mean carved into every line of his mouth and his voice, Lord. His voice cut the night open like a broken bottle. He called her name, the one she never told me, yelled it like it belonged to him, like it owed him something. I stepped off the porch, told her without looking, stay inside. But she didn't. I heard the door creak open. Her footsteps, light, bare, followed close behind me. She walked out slowly. No flinch. No fear. Just a slow, steady rise from everything that had once tried to bury her. The man froze when he saw her. Then he laughed. Ugly and wet. Well, look what the coyotes dragged in. Thought you could run forever, did you? Thought a little blood and dirt could hide you? She stood her ground, feet rooted like stone, arms loose at her sides. You don't own me, she said. He slid off the saddle, boots hitting dirt with a thud. His breath stank of old whiskey and older rot. I paid good money, he growled, stepping toward her. You were mine to take. And then, just as the moon slipped out from the cloud cover, he reached for her, fist curled around her wrist, pulling her forward like a child refusing to let go of a broken toy. She didn't scream. She slapped him. Hard. So hard the sound echoed off the barn. You paid for my silence, she spat. And I won't be quiet anymore. He staggered back, blinking. Then he raised his hand, and I stepped between them. No gun. No. Show. Just a man who'd buried too much to lose anything else. I won't say it again, I told him, low and even. You leave now, or you leave in the ground. He laughed at first, called me names. Said I was just another fool taken in by a pretty face and a lie, but I didn't blink, didn't flinch, just stood there, between him and what he thought he could still take, and eventually he saw it, the truth, that I wasn't threatening him, I was promising. He stumbled back, spit in the dirt, then turned, mounted his horse with the grace of a drunk man clinging to something that no longer belonged to him. He didn't look back. The dust kicked up behind him, swallowed him whole, and when the silence came again, it was different, cleaner, real. She dropped to her knees behind me, not from weakness, from weight. The kind of soul lets go of after carrying it too long. I didn't rush to her. I knelt slow. Took her hands in mine, lifted her, not like a rescue, like a promise. Spring melted into summer. The land exhaled. So did we? She stayed, never asked? Never. Check. She just belonged now, like the rocking chair or the oak or the cracked window pane that whistled when the wind leaned just right. She cooked sometimes. Not because I expected her to, but because she wanted to. Her laughter returned in pieces, like embers catching in dry wood. Then glowing. She started sewing again, left scraps of fabric on the windowsill, soft colors, gentle patterns. Things. Stitched with care, not survival. We spent evenings on the porch, didn't need much conversation. Just presence. Once I caught her looking at me like I was something she hadn't known existed, not a man, but a place. A safe one, and I found myself smiling without reason. Like maybe I was remembering who I used to be before the quiet set in. One night, when the crickets hummed low and the stars looked close enough to touch, she sat beside me, not nervous, not shy. Just steady. She sipped from her cup and said, "I'll tell you my name, but you gotta tell me yours first." I chuckled, low and warm, like a sound I hadn't made in years. "Deal," I said. She smiled, didn't say it yet. "Just let the smile be enough for now. They say we never married. No paper, no preacher, no rings, but folks in town say we were the truest thing that side of the canyon." Said, "You could tell by the way she leaned into my silence like it was music. By the way I watched her move, not to own her, but to memorize her freedom. Some folks think love rides in like thunder, but sometimes it walks barefoot, broken and brave, and asks for nothing but water and silence. And if you're lucky, you answer the door. The end."